Oh, hi. Hong Kong, the Special Administrative Region of People's Republic of China, one of the leading global cities and financial centers of the world, wins first place on the expected life expectancy and also the first place among the cities of the world with quantity of the highest skyscrapers. Hong Kong is located on the Geelong Peninsula from the west, the south and the east, washed by the South China Sea, and also on more than 260 islands, the largest among which are Hong Kong. Location of bodies of the supreme power and financial center of the territory. Lantau and Lama. In the north, Hong Kong borders on the Special Economic Zone. Shenzhen is a part of the Chinese province of Guangdong. Hong Kong can be divided into three parts. Actually, Island Hong Kong, Geelong and New Territories. Hong Kong is included into the region of the delta of the Zhujiang River, being located on the left coast of her mouth. In 1842, Hong Kong was captured by Great Britain and became her colony according to the Nanking Contract. However, big on the area, not on the population. A part of Hong Kong, so-called New Territories, was rented in 1898 for 99 years and for this term was a part of the British colony. And though China as the independent state appeared only in 1911, and the contract was signed with the Manchurian Empire of Qing, Great Britain recognized this lease agreement and never refused the obligation to transfer to China new territories by 1997. The Declaration of the Union on Decolonization of 1960 didn't provide the section of colonies, therefore Great Britain had no other option except how to integrate Hong Kong into structure of China. The referendum on independence of Hong Kong wasn't held. That, however, is in direct violation of the mentioned declaration, as the declaration is directed to granting of independence not only to colonies, but also the colonial people, and in ethnic sense Hong Kong is a part of the general national space with China. In 1997, People's Republic of China found sovereignty over the territory. According to the Joint Chinese-British Declaration and the Basic Law of Hong Kong, the territory-wide autonomy till 2047, that is within 50 years after transfer of sovereignty, is provided. Within the course, one country, two systems, and Hong Kongers in the conditions of high degree of autonomy operate. During this period, the Central National Government of the People's Republic of China undertakes questions of defense and foreign policy of the territory, while Hong Kong reserves control over the legislation, police, a monetary system, duties and immigration policy, and also keeps representation in some international organizations and actions under the name Hong Kong, China. Attempts of change of the status quo of 1997 encounter some resistance that finds the reflection in protests and demonstrations. The last large batch of demonstrations began on March 31, 2019 against the background of adoption of law on an extradition. As a result of June 30, 2020, the main legislature of China unanimously adopted the Law on Protection of National Security in Hong Kong. In 1860, after defeat of China, Empire of Qing, in the Second Opium War, the territory of the Geelong Peninsula to the south from Boundary Street and the island of Stonecutters were transferred to eternal possession of Great Britain according to the Beijing Contract. In 1898, Great Britain leased at China for 99 years the adjacent territory in the north of the Geelong Peninsula and the island of Lantau, which received the name New Territories. Date of the handover of Hong Kong to China was fixed by the Integrated Chinese-British Declaration concerning transfer of Hong Kong, signed after the long negotiations which received the name War of Words in Beijing on December 19, 1984. In 1997, the territory of Hong Kong was officially returned to People's Republic of China. In 2019-2020, Hong Kong was overflowed by a new wave of Massachusetts protests, mind strengthening of influence of Beijing in the autonomous area and the decision-making limiting civil liberties of its inhabitants. These performances quite often developed into street riots and were followed by clashes with the police. The United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told the Congress that Hong Kong doesn't use a high degree of autonomy from China anymore, and that such situation can lead to loss of the special trade status of Hong Kong in a relationship with the USA and threaten its status of the international financial center. On June 30, 2020, despite Massachusetts protests of residents of Hong Kong, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress adopted the Law on National Security of Hong Kong, which sharply reduced the level of the political autonomy of Hong Kong from continental China. Geography. Hong Kong is located on the southern coast of China and consists of the island Hong Kong, the island of Lantau, the peninsula of Julong, New Territories, and also about 260 small islands. New Territories adjoin from the north the peninsula of Julong, and behind their northern border the river Shenzhen. In total 262 islands in the South China Sea, the largest of which is the island of Lantau, belong to Hong Kong. The second largest and first in population, the island Hong Kong. The name Hong Kong literally is meant by the fragrant harbor and comes from the name of the area in the modern area Aberdeen on the island Hong Kong. Here once traded in products from fragrant wood and aromas. The narrow strip of water dividing Hong Kong and the peninsula of Julong carries the name the Bay Victoria. It is one of the deepest natural seaports in the world. Despite reputation of Hong Kong as highly urbanized territory, the authorities of Hong Kong pay much attention to ecology and gardening. The most part of Hong Kong still remains undeveloped, as on it hills and mountains with steep slopes prevail. From km squares of Hong Kong, less than 25% are mastered. The rest of the territory is covered with greens, from here about 40% are announced by recreation areas and reserves. The most part of urban development of the territory is located on the peninsula of Julong and the northern coast of the island Hong Kong, and also in the settlements dispersed across New Territories. Thanks to the long twisting coastline, Hong Kong possesses a set of bays, rivers and beaches. Despite abundance of greens and water in Hong Kong, environmental problems of the city cause the increasing alarm, and on air quality the city occupies one of the last places. About 80% of a smog of Hong Kong come from other areas of the delta of the Zhujiang River, that is from continental China. Hong Kong is located in 60 km to the east from Macau, on the opposite coast of the delta of the Zhujiang River. In the north it borders on the city of Shenzhen of the province of Guangdong. The highest point of Hong Kong, the mountain of Taimashan in New Territories, its height -958 m. In the territory of Hong Kong there are also lowlands. They are located in a northwest part of New Territories. The climate of Hong Kong is subtropical monsoonal. Kwon Kyopan's classification. The cool dry season which lasts from December to March, both a hot and stuffy rainy season which lasts from April to November is characteristic of him. During a dry season, cool air from the continent which bears a dry sunny weather blows. There can sometimes be serious cold snaps for tropics, a deep penetration of cold air from the north. Rainfall during this period is rare. During a rainy season, damp air from the Pacific Ocean blows, bringing plentiful rainfall. Temperature in Hong Kong seldom exceeds 33 C. However, the humidity is practically at the level of saturation that has the leading role, hardly transferable and extremely stuffy. The amount of precipitation can reach nearly 500 mm a month. In separate years through Hong Kong there can pass tropical cyclones, typhoons. The tropical forest can grow in such climate. Geologically, the earth near Hong Kong is stable already for millions of years. However, after heavy rains there can be landslides. Flora and fauna of Hong Kong underwent serious changes owing to climate change, sea level and influence of the person. Observatory of Hong Kong, public institution to which work on drawing up meteorological forecasts, warnings of weather cataclysms, and a geophysical survey of the territory of Hong Kong is assigned. The highest temperature recorded for a history of observations in Hong Kong is 38 C, and the lowest 4 C. At the same time, the highest and lowest temperatures recorded by Observatory of Hong Kong respectively are 36. 1 C on August 19, 1900 and on August 18, 1990, and also 0.0 C on January 18, 1893. Average temperature of the coldest month, January, is 16.1 C, and the average temperature of the hottest month, July, is 28.7 C. Hong Kong is located slightly to the south of the Tropic of Cancer, being on width is close to such cities as Havana, Mecca, Calcutta. In 1997, the Asian financial crisis of 1997, which struck at many East Asian markets, had serious negative impact on economy of Hong Kong. The same year in Hong Kong, the first infection of the person with a virus of bird flu HN was recorded. In 1998, after 6 years of construction within the central program of construction of the airport, the new International Airport of Hong Kong was open. This project was a part of the ambitious strategy of development for ports and the airports made in the early 80s. In the first half of 2003 in Hong Kong, epidemic of a virus of atypical pneumonia burst. Tan Chi-hua is the head of administration of Hong Kong. 1997-2005. Underwent criticism and charges of mistakes of overcoming Asian financial crisis of 1997 and rejection of due measures of fight against atypical pneumonia. SARS. In the same 2003, Tan Chi-hua's administration tried to carry out adoption of Article No. 23 of the Basic Law of Hong Kong, which gave the chance for violation of the rights and freedoms of Hong Kongers. As a result of semi-million protests, the administration was forced to refuse these plans. In 2004, during the same Massachusetts demonstrations, residents of Hong Kong demanded introduction in 2007 of a general election of the head of SAR. In March 2005, at the request of the Chinese leaders, of Tan Chi-hua resigned. Right after Tan Chi-hua's resignation, this place was taken by his deputy Donald Tsang. On March 25, 2007, Donald Tsang was re-elected for the second term. According to the Basic Law, which is carrying out a role of the Constitution of Hong Kong, local authorities keep sovereignty over all questions and affairs of the territory except for defense and foreign policy. While Hong Kong was colony, his governor was appointed by the monarch of Great Britain. After return of this territory under jurisdiction of China, it is headed by the Chief Minister of Administration of Hong Kong. He is elected by the Committee on Elections of the Chief Minister of Administration of Hong Kong, consisting of 800 people who represent the Hong Kong business elite. All other public servants of both executive and legislative branches of the power are appointed the Chief Minister of Administration, directly or indirectly, or get out voters. In the theory, such agreement has to guarantee almost full independence of political, cultural, legislative and economic infrastructure of Hong Kong of continental China. However, in practice, Beijing is often accused of the excessive intervention in internal affairs of Hong Kong, overstepping the limits determined by the Basic Law. In order that the new law came into force, the Chief Minister and most of 60 deputies of Legislative Assembly of Hong Kong has to support it. A half of deputies of Legislative Assembly is elected by universal suffrage. So-called geographical districts, that is the population broken on territorial sign. Another half from functional districts, that is groups of the natural persons and the organizations broken on occupation. Functional characteristics, that is, lawyers and law firms elect the deputy, financial groups and financiers etc. These groups represent the most significant spheres of life and economy of Hong Kong. According to the Basic Law, in the future all deputies of Legislative Assembly will have to be elected through universal suffrage. Since June 16, 2005, the position of the Chief Minister of Administration of Hong Kong was held by Donald Tsang. He was elected by committee of the electors appointed by Beijing from among the Hong Kong business elite. Prior to the handover of Hong Kong to China in 1997, Donald Tsang held a position of the Chief Secretary of Administration of Hong Kong in the colonial government. On June 24, 2005, he officially entered a present position. At it he replaced Dong Jianhua, who resigned before the put time for health reasons. According to other data, as a result of the public pressure. Therefore, at first Donald Tsang had to finish for Dong his term, which is coming to an end on June 30, 2007, according to interpretation of Appendix I in Article No. 46 of the Basic Law of Hong Kong. Elections of the new Chief Minister by 852-seater Electoral Committee had to take place on July 10, 2005, but already on June 16 Donald Tsang was declared the winner, as he was the only candidate for whose promotion necessary 100 members of Electoral Committee voted. The billionaire Tung Chee-hwa, whose candidacy was proposed by the authorities of China, was the first Chief Minister of Hong Kong. He was elected by committee from 400 electors. On July 1, 1997, he officially entered a position. In July 2002, his first 5-year term expired, and it was also automatically re-elected as the only nominated candidate. It gave a reason to critics to say that the committee didn't choose, and actually issued appointment of the candidacy of Beijing twice. In 1996, in the People's Republic of China, the Temporary Legislative Assembly of Hong Kong was formed, and after the handover of Hong Kong to China in 1997, it moved to Hong Kong. The temporary meeting repealed several laws, adopted by the Colonial Legislative Assembly, which is in public elected in 1995. The temporary meeting adopted a number of laws, including the law on public order, according to which, holding any action with the number of participants more than 30 required permission of police. Elections to Legislative Assembly of Hong Kong were held on May 24, 1998, on September 10, 2000 and on September 12, 2004. According to the Basic Law, in Legislative Assembly of the real third convocation of 25 places it is allocated for deputies from geographical districts and 30 places from functional districts. Despite discontent of democratic opposition with a system of functional districts which grants the right to very small amount of voters. A little more than card. To elect a half of deputies of parliament, the elections which took place in 1998, 2000 and 2004 were estimated by observers as free and open. Following colonial tradition, public institutions of Hong Kong keep the neutrality and high quality, working without obvious intervention of Beijing. Many government buildings are located in the area central on the island Hong Kong, near a historical location of the city of Victoria, the place of initial location of the British settlements. Allowed in Hong Kong disputes around the right for residents in Hong Kong, while contradictions concerning the 23rd article of the Basic Law of Hong Kong became the main subject of political life of Hong Kong in 2002 and 2003 erupted, having reached the culmination which was expressed on July 1, 2003 in semi-million demonstration. Despite it, the government continued attempts to press through the law in Legislative Assembly. However, one of the main pro-government parties refused to vote for the law. Having realized that the law won't manage to be adopted, the government put his project generated by Article 23 under cloth. By the end 2003 and in 2004 the main subject of contradictions became a question of a general election, requirements about which became the main slogan of Massachusetts demonstrations on July 1, 2004. On September 24, 25 members of Legislative Assembly of Hong Kong of democratic views, some of which were announced by Beijing traitors after their criticism of actions of Beijing during suppression of students' demonstrations in the Beijing Tiananmen Square in 1989, went to next above the province of Hong Kong, having accepted the unprecedented invitation from the authorities of IT. The invitation was regarded as the most considerable act of goodwill in relation to democratic forces of Hong Kong after the events in Tiananmen Square. December 4th, the Front of Civil Human Rights and deputies from the Democratic Camp organized demonstration which main requirement was an inclusion of determination of terms of introduction of a general election and offers on political reforms on elections of the Chief Minister and Legislative Assembly in 2007 and 2008 respectively. According to police, 630,000 people participated in demonstration. Organizers reported about at least. According to these offers, the Electoral Committee would double from 800 to 1600 dicks. And members of Legislative Assembly would become 10 more. On 5 from geographical and from functional districts. On December 22, 2005 the reforms offered by the Chief Minister of Administration of Hong Kong Donald Tsang because of a position of the Democratic camp couldn't collect necessary 2/3 of votes, having received 34 votes for and 24 minds. After defeat, China and the Chief Minister let know that carrying out reforms is impossible before elections of 2012. At the same time, vote affected Tsang's popularity a little. Level of his support decreased from 82 only to 79%. The new Chief Minister of Administration Lun Chunying, who gathered on elections on March 25, 2012 of 689 of 1132 voices, entered a position on July 1 the same year, the celebration of 15-year anniversary from the date of return of the former British colony under jurisdiction of China. On July 1, 1997. A term of office of the fourth head of administration of Hong Kong, from July 1, 2012 to June 30, 2017. According to the Basic Law of the People's Republic of China about SAR Hong Kong, the candidate for a post of the head of administration of SAR is proposed on the place by elections or consultations. Official appointment is made by the central government of the People's Republic of China. In spite of the fact that Hong Kong isn't the independent state, it has the right of independent membership in such international organizations and actions as the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or the Olympic Games, but after 1997 the official name of his delegations was changed to Hong Kong, China. Hong Kong also participates in some international actions by inclusion of the delegate and group of representatives of the People's Republic of China. The elections of the head of administration, which took place on March 25, 2012, were won by Lun Chunying. At the end of September 2014 in Hong Kong, Massachusetts, protests began Min's attempt of the Central Power of China to interfere with carrying out free elections in the former colony of England in 2017. Protests received the name of Revolution of Umbrellas. In 2019 in Hong Kong there passed Massachusetts protests against the bill of an extradition offered by the government. As a result of protests the bill was withdrawn, and the head of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, apologized to the public. Ministries: Ministry of City Service of Hong Kong, Ministry of Civil Aviation of Hong Kong, Ministry of Leisure and Culture of Hong Kong, Ministry of Housing Construction of Hong Kong, Ministry of Environment Protection of Hong Kong, Ministry of Immigration of Hong Kong, Ministry of Information Service of Hong Kong, Ministry of Taxes of Hong Kong, Ministry of a Population Census and Statistics of Hong Kong, Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Reserves of Hong Kong, Ministry of Construction and Development of Hong Kong, Ministry of Transport of Hong Kong, Ministry of Electric and Mechanical Services of Hong Kong, Ministry of Justice of Hong Kong, Same Ministry of Hong Kong, Customs and Excise Ministry of Hong Kong. Hong Kong consists of 18 districts. Each district is presented by a district meeting which gives advice to the government of Hong Kong concerning local value, concerning public institutions, programs of development of the district, cultural actions and environment protection. The Department of Internal Affairs is responsible for coordination of actions of the district authorities and informing the population on plans and actions of the government. It carries out communication with the population on places through bodies of the respective areas. In Hong Kong also de facto there are areas under the historically developed names and also the cities and settlements. However, they have no formal administrative status, being a part of one of districts. Historical borders of Victoria, Geelong and New Geelong are stated in laws, however they have no legal and administrative powers anymore. During the 1990s, the population of Hong Kong began to grow quickly. As of the middle of 2016, it makes over 7,167,403 people. July 2016 assessment. About 95% of residents of Hong Kong are ethnic Chinese, the majority of whom is made by Cantoneses and also such Chinese ethnic groups as Hakka and Shuaishites. The Cantonese dialect, the kind of Chinese widespread in the neighboring Chinese province of Guangdong, is the main language of communication in Hong Kong. Official languages of the territory are Chinese, without indication of a concrete version, and English. According to a population census of 1996 of 3.1% of residents of Hong Kong called English language of daily communication, 34.9% called English the second language. Bilingual signs on Chinese and English meet everywhere in Hong Kong. After transfer of sovereignty in 1997, inflow of immigrants from continental China increased. Level of use of Apatanku, an official adverb of continental China, also increased. Integration with continental economy resulted in the need for the people owning Apatanqua. The remaining 5% make the non-Chinese ethnic groups which, despite the small number, form very noticeable groups. The South Asian population of Hong Kong consists of Indians, Pakistanis and a small number of Nepalese. The Vietnamese running from war became permanent residents of Hong Kong. About 140,000 Filipinos work in Hong Kong as housekeepers. Also, there are housekeepers from Indonesia, and their quantity constantly grows. In the commercial and financial sector of Hong Kong, Europeans, Americans, Australians, Canadians, Japanese and Koreans also work. Dynamics of number of Jews of the city following. 1921, 100 people, 1954, 250 people, 1968, 200 people. Including 70 Sephardic Jews and 130 Ashkenazi. 1998, 2,500 people, 2002, 6,000 people. Hong Kong, one of the most densely populated countries. Dependent territories. In the world, population density makes more than people on came. In borders of Hong Kong, the most densely populated island in the world, Aplicca, is located. The population of Hong Kong is generally concentrated in extremely densely populated center of the territory consisting of Geelong and a northern part of the island Hong Kong. Population density in other parts of the territory is much less. Several million inhabitants live unevenly in new territories, the south of the island Hong Kong and on the island of Lantau. The increasing number of Hong Kongers prefer to live in continental Shenzhen where the prices are much lower and to go to Hong Kong for work. As of 2012, 19.6% of residents live below the poverty line. For them there are different social privileges, however it generally improves the general provision a little. Generally, families with children and old generation get to category of the poor population. Today there is no accurate program for poverty eradication in the city, however the state undertakes separate measures. For example, in 2011 the minimum hourly wage, which is $2.6 an hour, was established. Other serious social problem of the city is the acute shortage of living space. In particular, the area of the standard apartment on 5 people is 28 square meters, At the same time, on kitchen and the bathroom is given only on 2-3 m. And housing price is extremely high. A half of residents live in social apartments. As of 2014, nearly 500,000 inhabitants who don't have funds for purchase of the apartment live in so-called boxes/cages, rooms with an area of 1-2 square meter. At the same time, their number constantly increases in connection with fast rise in price of apartments. The average of births on one woman during the period from July 2016 to July 2017 made 1.125. It is one of the lowest indicators in the world, much lower than 2.1, the level necessary for maintenance of constant population. Despite it, the population of Hong Kong continues to grow thanks to inflow of immigrants from continental China. From July 2017 to July 2018, migration gain was 49600 people. The average expected life expectancy in Hong Kong in 2017 at men made 81.7 years, and at women of 87.7 years. Whereas -56891. 2017. Birth rate -7.67 promille. 2017. Death -45883. 2017. Mortality -6.19 promille. 2017. Natural increase +11008. 2017. Natural increase of +1.48 promille. 2017. Balance of migrations +26000. 2017. Balance of migrations of +3.51 promille. 2017. The economy of the territory is based on the free market, low taxation and non-interference of the state to economy. Hong Kong is the offshore territory, it is free port and doesn't raise customs duties on import, there is no value-added tax or its equivalents. Excises are raised only from 4 types of goods irrespective of import, they are local production. These are alcoholic drinks, tobacco, mineral oil and methyl alcohol. Hong Kong, the important center of the international finance and trade, and the level of concentration of the headquarters is the highest in the Pacific Rim. On indicators of CHA or gross domestic product and 8 gross city product, Hong Kong is the richest city in the People's Republic of China. The system of taxation of Hong Kong was created on its sample English and in many respects inherited the principles of the complex of actions of the British Commonwealth in the field of tax policy accepted in 1947. In Hong Kong there is no division of the companies on resident and non-resident, and the territorial principle of taxation is accepted. It means that the companies of Hong Kong are subject to taxation only if income is gained from a source in Hong Kong or activities for receiving this income were carried out in Hong Kong. If the company didn't conduct activity in the territory of Hong Kong and didn't gain income from sources in Hong Kong, she isn't subject to taxation. In Hong Kong there are no capital gains taxes, dividends, a royalty received from abroad or shipped outward. Income tax rate for the companies conducting activity in Hong Kong makes 16.5%. Continuing the policy of the British administration, the government of Hong Kong gives a priority in management of economy to the free market and the private sector. Since 1980 the government played a passive role with an official policy of positive non-interference. Hong Kong is given often as a model example of capitalism of laissez-faire embodied in practice. From the moment of emergence of the Index of Economic Freedom in 1995, Hong Kong annually wins first place in and within 13 years. He also wins first place in the report Economic Freedom in the World. Hong Kong has the small number of the earth, suitable for cultivation, and poor natural resources, therefore it is forced to import cheap part of food products and raw materials. Hong Kong holds the 11th place in the list of the largest trade actors in the world. The total cost of his import and export exceeds a gross internal product of the territory. As of 2006, in Hong Kong, consulates of 114 countries, more than in any other city of the world, functioned. A considerable part of export of Hong Kong is made by re-export, that is, the products made outside the boundaries of the territory, generally on continental China and extended through Hong Kong. Even before transfer of sovereignty to People's Republic of China, Hong Kong established the developed commercial and investment relations with continental China. The autonomous status of the territory allows her to carry out a role of gate for the investments and resources going to the continent. Currency of Hong Kong is the Hong Kong dollar. Since 1983 he is tied to US dollar. Exchange rate can fluctuate in a corridor between 7.75 and 7.85 Hong Kong dollars for 1 American. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the 7th largest exchange in the world, in February 2007 her capitalization made $1.69 trillion. By the number of the IPO in 2006, the Hong Kong Exchange took the 2nd place in the world, conceding only London. According to the Index of Financial Centers of the World of 2007 made by Corporation of the London City for the purpose of assessment of competitiveness of 46 financial centers worldwide, Hong Kong is the 3rd best financial center in the world and the 1st in Asia. Today's services sector gives more than 90% of gross domestic product of Hong Kong. After World War II and the followed industrialization of Hong Kong by the dominating sector of the territory, there was an industry. The economy of Hong Kong annually grew in the 1970th on average for 8.9% thanks to export. In the 1980th, in the economy of Hong Kong there was a fast transformation, as a result of which the service sector became the basis of the economy. Average annual DDD growth during this period was 7.2%. During this period the most part of production was transferred to continental China, and now the industry contribution to economy makes only 9%. After in the 1990th Hong Kong became recognized financial center, economic growth slowed down up to 2.7%. Thanks to rapid economic growth and fast industrialization, Hong Kong was included into the 4 of Asian tigers, or dragons, along with Singapore, the Republic of Korea and Taiwan. In 1998, because of consequences of Asian financial crisis, the economy of the territory was reduced by 5.3%. It was followed by the period of restoration and growth, which in 2000 was 10% despite the continuing deflation. In 2003, the outbreak of atypical pneumonia, SARS, because of what growth of economy that year was only 2.3%, had negative impact on economy of Hong Kong. However, thanks to restoration and growth of external and domestic demand in 2004, the economy began to grow surely again. At the same time, decrease in prime cost increased competitiveness of the Hong Kong export. The deflation period preceding 68 months ended in the middle of 2004 when the rate of inflation was stabilized by a zero mark. Since 2003, the regime of individual visits, which saved citizens of a continental part of the People's Republic of China from need to join tourist group, was introduced to visit Hong Kong. The flow of tourists which increased in result of this measure from the continent has a positive impact on income of tourism industry of Hong Kong. It was also promoted by opening of the Hong Kong Disneyland in 2005. The economy continues to grow surely thanks to consumer confidence and growth of trade. In Hong Kong, the low level of taxation of the companies and natural persons is established. In 2006, on DDD indicator per capita equal 38127 US dollars, Hong Kong took the 6th place in the world, advancing such countries as Switzerland, Denmark and Japan. On the total amount of DDD, which is 253.1 billion US dollars, Hong Kong takes the 40th place. As of 2014, Hong Kong took the 3rd place in the world ranking of ease of business. Takes the 5th place in the rating of tax systems of the world. According to the World Bank, in Hong Kong, 3 taxes, from which 17.6% income tax, 5.1% a labor tax, 0.1% others. The total rate of taxes is 22.8%. Since May 1, 2019, the minimum wage in Hong Kong for the workers who aren't foreign house servants makes $8.37.50 an hour. $4.78 an hour. Hong Kong possesses the complex advanced transport system, including the public and individual transport. The system of public transport, except the system of rail or transport uniting the subway, local and intracity electric trains. The former Kowloon Cantonese Railroad. Includes bus traffic, ferry traffic between island and the mainland of the city and also with adjacent islands, the 2-storied Hong Kong tram and the funicular connecting the downtown to Peak Victoria. Besides, as transport, the escalator and the elevator, which is a chain of several escalators and travelators which connects areas the central and western and the EMA levels, is used. Hong Kong is described often as the place where the East meets the West, that is expressed in his economic infrastructure, architecture, education and city culture. On one street it is possible to find the traditional Chinese little shops trading in the Chinese drugs, Buddhist aromas or soup from a spark fin. But right there round the corner it is possible to see movie theatre, at which there is the last Hollywood blockbuster, the English pub, Catholic church or McDonald's. Official languages of the territory are Chinese and English. Bilingual indexes meet everywhere in Hong Kong. Public institutions, police, most institutions and shops run business in both languages. In spite of the fact that the British Board ended in 1997, the Western culture deeply took roots in Hong Kong and coexists in harmony with traditional East philosophy and traditions. The cosmopolitan spirit of Hong Kong also finds reflection in a variety of the presented kitchens. Various directions of Chinese cuisine, especially seafood, enjoy the greatest popularity. At the same time, in Hong Kong there are a lot of European, American, Japanese, Korean and other restaurants. Also the local cuisine, which can be met in Kakana and Tay Katona, is very popular. Hong Kongers very seriously treat food, therefore Hong Kong is the place attracting the best chefs from around the world. Along with the status of one of the centers of world trade, Hong Kong is also the large exporter of entertaining products, in particular, of a genre of martial arts. Several Hollywood celebrities are natives of Hong Kong, among them Bruce Lee, Chow Yun-fat, Jackie Chan. Hong Kong also gave to Hollywood several outstanding film directors, such as John Woo, Wong Kar-wai, Tsui Hark, Yuan Heping. The Hong Kong movies, for example, The Chungkingsky Express, Double Castling, Lethal Soccer, Dismantling in Bronx, and Love Mood, also several times won world fame. The famous director Quentin Tarantino in one of an interview told that the Hong Kong fighters had a great influence on him. Hong Kong is also main center of production of music. In Hong Kong there live many movie stars. The culture of a karaoke is a part of nightlife of Hong Kong. The administration of Hong Kong supports cultural institutions, such as Museum of Heritage of Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Museum of Art, the Hong Kong Academy of Executive Art, the Hong Kong Public Library and the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra. Besides, the Department of Entertaining and Cultural Services of Hong Kong subsidizes and gives sponsorship to the foreign actors coming to Hong Kong. Since 2001 in the city, the International Literary Festival is annually held. Education. As the former overseas territory of Great Britain, Hong Kong generally kept an education system of Great Britain. At higher steps in Hong Kong there are both British and American systems. The Hong Kong University, the oldest educational institution of the third step in Hong Kong, traditionally was based on the British model, however in recent years absorbed some lines of the American model. The second in time, the basis, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, repeats the American model with the special British system of colleges. The Hong Kong University of Science and Technology is founded on the American model of the higher education. In Hong Kong there are 9 state universities and also several private higher education institutions. One of striking examples, the Lingnan University around Kunming, is the only university of Hong Kong in which there is a training in 7 free arts. One of the first educational institutions which existence is confirmed by historical sources was Leeds College, founded in 1075 near modern New Territories. In 1860 in Hong Kong there were about 20 rural schools. The foundation for modern Hong Kong education was laid by Protestant and Catholic missionaries. The Italian missionaries began to train the Chinese and English children in 1843. Education was provided only to boys. The state educational institutions of Hong Kong are supervised by Department of Education of the Government SAR Hong Kong. Report of the system: optional 3-year kindergartens with compulsory 6-year primary education and a 3-year first step of secondary education follows. Then the optional 2-year secondary education of the second step, which is coming to the end with obtaining the educational examination certificate of Hong Kong. Then the 2-year course of training to examinations of advanced level of Hong Kong follows. In 2009-2012 gradual introduction of the new 3+3+4 system consisting of a 3-year course of high school of the first step, a 3-year course of the second step and 4-year higher education is planned. In Hong Kong there are also higher education institutions providing academic degrees of the bachelor, master and doctor, are the highest diplomas and diplomas of the junior expert. The lead educational institutions of Hong Kong can be divided into 3 categories. The state, subsidized and private institutions. The smallest is the first category. The greatest number of educational institutions belongs to subsidized, receiving the help from the government and grants from the charitable organizations, often of religious orientation. As a rule, it is the Catholic and other Christian organizations, but among them there can also be Buddhist, Taoist, Islamic and Confucian organizations. At the same time, private educational institutions quite often are operated by the Christian organizations. Out of this system there are institutions within the system of direct subsidies and private international schools. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.